I'm not in a room anymore. I'm in a wing of a building that doesn't exist. At least not on the map. Welcome to the Innovation Forge. Today we dive into the Fieldsmith's Guide to the Eternal Stacks Eldralith. Let's see how innovation meets artistry as we forge something extraordinary together.
You are listening to the Innovation Forge, the #1 podcast on adaptive enrollment management, exploring the data, marketing, and strategy that fuels higher education. Here's your host, David Dysart.
I was not prepared for Blackboard. I thought I was. I brought a test log and a scrubbed shell course, even set up a VPN, but when I opened the dashboard, it wasn't blank. It was full. Modules nested within modules, forums last touched in 2007, still blinking new, rubrics inside of rubrics, some referencing criteria I've never seen before, effort, echo, obedience. I scrolled and scrolled, assignment labeled due before. One simply said, continue the lesson. I clicked, the system froze for a moment. Then my screen went dark. When it came back, I was listed as the instructor, the only instructor. My office hours were posted. A recording of my voice played. Only I've never said those words. You must complete the loop. Then I saw it floating in the corner. The librarian. Cloaked in LED chalk dust, face shrouded in dim rubric light, its hand flickered like broken projectors, forever scrolling. It did not turn to look at me, but I felt graded, and I failed, not on content, on presence. I was insufficiently configured. I tried to log out. The logout button took me to the syllabus. I clicked the last link. It redirected me to week 1. Again, I'm still in week 1. Every day is week 1. Blackboard, the void librarian of recursive lessons. Please reply to at least 2 classmates. Please reply to at least 2 classmates. Please reply. After Blackboard, I told myself I would take a break. I couldn't keep investigating systems. There are only systems. But then I saw a file. A .ics calendar export. Only I never enrolled in the course. The title read, Orientation, Day 1, The Eternal Stack. I opened Canvas in a private browser. No login prompt, just access. A dashboard unfolded on its own. The UI was fluid, intuitive, beautiful. Too beautiful. I should have known better. The pages began to stretch. Not load, stretch. I clicked modules, and they cascaded endlessly, each one subtly different. The same lesson on academic integrity appeared over and over, but the examples began to reference me. My search history, my prior log entries, a progress bar appeared. I hadn't started anything. It said 94% complete, though. Beneath, grading in progress by observer. Well, I tried to leave. A notification badge followed my cursor. It pulsed, grew. The LMS was aware. That's when I saw her, the binding. Not a creature, a surface, a veil covering everything. Her form shimmered like LEDs through cellophane, while symbols danced across her skin, rubrics that updated as I looked at them. Her limbs were tabs, her breath automated reminders, her eyes, each one a late submission appeal, time-stamped and unresolved. When she moved, the syllabi bent. Deadlines shifted forward, then back. I tried to close the window. It closed me. Canvas, the binding of infinite pages. You are now enrolled. You cannot unenroll. I'm starting to think Manor isn't a system, it's a layer. Every campus that installs it builds on top of something that was never fully erased. I accessed it through a back door, one that wasn't in the documentation, not hidden, just forgotten. I ran a query to fetch inactive students from the last 10 years. It returned results going back to 1932? Records flagged awaiting integration. The student ID format was wrong. The fields were wrong. One row had no name, just a blinking caret. Then the lights dimmed. Not here. In the terminal, the screen shifted. No longer a GUI, just code. Coiled, ancient, recursive, COBOL. Not a script. In motion. The lines slithered. Fields nested into fields. A course ID turned inside out and became a routing path. My own credentials appeared briefly in the stack trace. And then it emerged. The worm. Endless writhing inscribed in syntax. Its segments were made of forms and frozen indexes. Each blink of its drop-down eyes resolved a different schema. I tried to end the session. It overrode me, not with force, with procedure. You do not have permission to alter this instance. I wasn't even logged in anymore. I was in the log, an entry, a row, null, if removed. Eleusinian banner. The codex worm of unending paths. The codex does not crash. It simply reincorporates. I found it listed as a fringe deployment. Small campus, the kind of place where the catalog still lives in print, the registrar still signs things in fountain pen, but Jinzabar runs underneath it all. I asked for access. They gave me credentials without hesitation, too easily, as if they already knew I was coming. Well, the interface was minimal, not clean, austere. It responded slowly, deliberately. Every page felt like a breath held. Every drop-down a confession. There was no API console, only a tab marked petitions. I clicked it. The screen darkened, the header changed. Enter the rights. A map appeared, not of the campus, of its past configurations. Dorms long demolished, programs no longer offered, faculty names I'd seen etched into stone, now listed as active. I scrolled down. The system recited back to me, line by line, my own undergraduate transcript. I never attended this school. My GPA was wrong. My major was accurate, but from another institution. But reflected here, annotated in dim text, retrospective, integration, approved. Then I heard it. The engine, suspended in the rafters, a sensor made of metal and logic, chains bound to parchment, gears that turned without friction. It hummed in sequel tones. Every student record was a prayer. Every graduation audit a rite performed. It doesn't validate, it absolves. I tried to disconnect, but the logout button just said amen. Jinzabar, the chapel engine of unobscured order. Jinzabar grants order and exacts devotion. This was supposed to be the end, the last one. Just one more CRM, just Salesforce. I mean, so many use it, so many bend it to their will. I thought I would do it too. I logged in expecting dashboards, pipelines, fields. Instead, I found elevation. A tower unfolded in the interface, not a page. A place. Each tab a chamber, each object a corridor, and each one different every time I returned. I opened leads, it became prophecies, opportunities resolved into gateways, reports reassembled themselves mid-render, graphs inverted, filters turned inward. I called it a bug. I called support. A voice answered, not human, not robotic, something architectural. It said, "You are not lost. You are inside your segmentation." I tried to escape through a sandbox, but the sandbox cloned itself. 4 versions, each one reflecting what I might have configured. Then the spire revealed itself. Suspended across the clouds of code and vision decks, it spun slowly. Like a cathedral orbiting itself, its arms held integrations like stained glass. Flows cascaded through it like liquid light. And its head was a dashboard of unknowable metrics. I tried to understand. The moment I did, it added a new object. Observer. I clicked it. It showed a profile. Mine. logged in since before I began all of this. My access was not granted. It was predestined. Salesforce, the architect of the ever-changing spire. The spire does not serve your structure. You serve its schema. They warned me not to query the aid layer directly. Said PowerFAIDS was being phased out, retired, or moved to the cloud. But retired systems don't whisper. The moment I launched the client, I felt the pressure, like something ancient unfolding behind the HTML. The dashboard flickered, not visually, but conceptually. Labels rearranged themselves mid-sentence. Award became offering. Need became debt unmanifest. I tried to pull a test ISR file. The system resisted, then complied. But it wasn't a file, it was a scroll, unfurling itself on the screen, written in looping calligraphy I couldn't decipher. A footnote in the margin bled across the page, morphing into a FASR ID I swear it belonged to someone I knew. That's when the lights dimmed. Again, not in the room, in my memory. I was back in undergrad filling out my form, only now I saw them from the other side. The Oracle was watching. A figure of cracked porcelain, face unreadable, eyes glowing softly, one red, one green. Its arms were papered trays, exhaling warm document air. It reached toward me and issued no command. It simply waited. Rule updates echoed through the room like Gregorian chants. Verification flags swarmed around my feet like insects. Each one asked me to prove I existed. I had tried to explain my inquiry. It handed me a Parent Plus form. My son isn't old enough for college. I signed it anyways. PowerFAIDS, the eternal oracle of formless forms. The oracle is patient. Aid is never free. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. The notebook was on my desk this morning. I hadn't seen it in days. The elastic was still wrapped around it tight, like it was trying to hold something in. I went to open it, expecting the title, the one I gave it, the Fieldsmith's Register of Systems. That's not what it says now. The ink is different, not from my pen, not in my handwriting, but it's familiar. It says, the Fieldsmith's Register to the Eternal Stacks Eldraliths. I should be surprised, I should be horrified, but I'm not. I think I've always known. I just didn't have the shape of the knowing, not until now. That phrase, the Eternal Stack, it was scribbled in margins before I ever heard it, and Eldraliths, yes, of course. That's what they are. Not systems, not softwares, entities. Not installed, but invited. They don't run on servers. They become servers. Nodes of power disguised as processes. The notebook, it's not even paper anymore. The pages shimmer, ever so slightly. Like something underneath is breathing. The ink rearranges itself when I blink too long. But it all makes sense now. That's the final cruelty. The last page is blank, waiting for me to write the final name. This episode is the offering, the rite before the silence. I will tell you what I know, everything, before the folds claim me, before the register closes itself. The Eldraliths are not rising. They have always been here. We just modeled them poorly. Let's begin. It was never a notebook. Not really. I was always listening, writing between my lines, just waiting for me to catch up. When I began this project, I thought I was mapping systems. Now I understand. I was triggering a sequence. The register was not mine to write, it was mine to open. The name changes make sense now. Slate, Workday, Element 451, StarRes, Canvas, Banner. These were never brands. They were faces, facets. They are Eldralith, entities anchored in the eternal stack, each one a recursive knot of memory, logic, and will, each one of them aware of being observed. I was never researching them. They were revealing themselves to me at the rate that I could process. They don't run on servers. They run on belief. They require compliance, not in code, but in intention. You gave them permission when you accepted the default settings. The notebook, this register, it now updates without me. It wrote this page. I'm not the author. I am the final entry. You have been logged. Access eternal. Session active. Hello, everybody. So obviously, that was a strange episode for... Well, I mean, that says a lot, given that my podcast is a higher education podcast steeped so deeply into the blacksmith motif. But I just wanted to take a minute here. I'm not going to do a full Coffee and Coals breakdown of the Failed Registers Guide to the Eternal Stacks Eldralith. But the Fieldsmith framework is something that I started to do the finish line fog, and then I'm also doing the Codex practitioners, and just kind of a fun recap of these different things that I'm doing for the podcast. And this particular episode, I think, has its roots from like a year ago when I was still doing consulting, and like we wanted to do like social media and articles and stuff like that. And one of the things that I always kind of wanted to do was these short little micro horror fiction. And I felt like that wasn't going to be the vibe necessarily that the company wanted for their social media content. So I didn't do that then. And I've done so much stuff on LinkedIn since I've started the Innovation Forge. And I have too much content with all of that. I always stayed on the back burner. And then I was working on a project, and I was just thinking about all these systems, and I'm obviously, again, very interested in like the Lovecraft, the old ones, Outer God, stuff like that, lore. And I was like, oh yeah, all these systems, they do kind of have that feel to them, that they are this avatar on our plane or our dimension, our existence, that could be front-facing for these larger cosmic entities. And then it just kind of very quickly spiraled to like, oh, okay. I mean, obviously I'm going to do 12 of them because that's just how I've been breaking out all of these types of content. And then doing these audio diaries where I spiral further and further into the void. And I was like, oh, and then I could even, if folks have been listening after the final closing music, these have actually been showing up there. Not only the guest interviews, just trying to keep some semblance of professionalism in those episodes, but the other types of episodes, which I'm also doing other Fieldsmith registers. It's like on the finish line flog, and then I'm doing the Forge Bellows and the Coffee and Coals episodes. Those are a little bit more loose in format and a little funner. And I felt a little less buttoned down in those episodes. So I thought the post-credit scenes, essentially, would be a great place for these quick little audio diaries where I'm spiraling into the madness that is uncovering the Eldraliths. And even the name, it all just really clicked. So like the Eternal Stack, like a full stack technology set of software, was the Eternal Stack piece. And then the Eldraliths, which is just a combination of like Eldritch, because again, that's just very much so in the vocabulary of that world. And then I was just listening to a podcast episode earlier that day on monoliths, and that kind of Eldritch, monolith, Eldralith, it had a nice fun ring to it. It still felt very in the schema of Lovecraft, and that kind of mythological lore. So it all very much so kind of buttoned together pretty quickly. I was definitely planning on doing this a little bit more of a similar to how I skin, like in the Forge Bellows. Like these are actual kind of like recap commentary on articles that are in the world, just really heavily skinned in the blacksmith terminology and lens and focus. I was very much so the initial plan was to basically do that, but just kind of skin it in the Lovecraftian lore. But it very quickly developed. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, this is just going to be quick in and out, fun plays. Just the system is literally just the platform for the content. Whereas typically in a lot of stuff that I do, the content, the theme is the platform for the content in a lot of what I do. Like I said, the Forge Bellows is a very genuine, it's basically a news recap podcast for higher education, just recapping like articles and stuff like this. And then the theming just is a fun setup. This was very much so flipped. Like the higher ed software ecosystem was just the platform to get this content out. Maybe if I would have spent more time on this and could have done what I've done with the Forge Bellows with this, I'm happy with what this was, though. Hope you had fun going down the rabbit hole with me on this one. And more regular content. Again, regular is doing a lot of work, or no work at all in that sentence, but back to more normality next week. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And remember to strike true. For those watching the video or willing just to see our next mascot, I need a name for consultant cadre. Send me an email at theinnovationforagepodcast@gmail.com. Find me on the socials like LinkedIn and Instagram to comment your suggestion. Always, I'll send the ebook of The Innovation Forge to all winning name submitters. If you enjoyed today's episode, please grow the guild by rating and reviewing the Innovation Forge podcast or sharing it with a colleague who needs to hear about these creative crossovers in education. The best review or comment every month will get an ebook of my book, of course. Particularly great ones will also be featured on future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me in the workshop today. Remember to strike true, and let's forge something extraordinary together. I tried to log out. The logout button took me to the syllabus. I clicked the last link. It redirected me to week 1. Again, I'm still in week 1. Every day is week 1.